So let's go into the settings for this machine by hitting the piece of paper. Now, it has taken me to page 4 of 12. I'm just going to page back to page 1 and start at the beginning. Now, all the options or default settings of this machine are in categories, and these are shortcut buttons to those categories. So maybe I just want to look at my stitches or the machine or embroidery. It'll skip to the appropriate page by using this. But for this exercise, we're going to go through all 12 pages. So the first thing is the width control. This is really interesting if you're doing a lot of applique and you're doing satin stitch and you want to go thin satin stitch to a wider one. Instead of using the speed button, we can use our speed button to make the zigzags wider or smaller, as opposed to having to stop what we're doing and adjusting it on the screen. Fine vertical adjustment. This is for our feed dogs. So if we're using very, very fine silk, lawn, very fine fabrics, we may need to adjust that, same as the horizontal. But for most of the fabrics that I do, I'm a quilter and a garment sewer. I would always leave those at 0. Pressure foot height. This is very important when you actually go to quilt your quilt. So the quilting is actually the 3 layers together. You may need to raise your pressure foot because you have the backing, batting, and the quilt top. So you need more room underneath the foot of your quilting foot. The pressure, so we could adjust that if we've got a quilt that has a very high loft batting. We may want our pressure foot lighter because we don't want it to squish our quilt down. The last option on page 1 is the automatic fabric sensor system. This is amazing. So what will happen is that if I'm going from, say, a stretch knit to a cotton, and they vary in width, I can enable this, and my pressure foot and the sensor here will actually adjust it based on the fabric thickness. Let's go to page 2. Initial position. So, Brother headquarters is in Japan, and all Brother machines are left justified. That means the needle in its home position is always to the left. I always prefer to make mine center, and now I have set the default to center. Pivoting height. So if you're sewing along, say you want to top stitch on a collar or a cuff on a shirt, you may want your pivot height to be a little higher so that when you lift your foot, you have enough clearance to turn your garment around. Or if you're quilting and you need to pivot it, you may need a little higher clearance for your foot. Dual feet adjustment, just like we had adjustments on the feed dogs, we can do this with our move it foot. Automatic presser foot. So what we can do is that we can have it lift at the end of a design, which is very nice to do. And we can also have it press to trim. So when it comes to the end, it will actually trim. I have that one off this. I like to trim it when I'm ready. So I just leave mine off and I hit the scissors up here. Let's go to page 3. Initial stitch page. Now I've had a couple of my students not understand what the initial stitch page means. So if I go out of here, and I'm going to show you. Let's go into sewing. This is my initial page. It always shows my utility stitches or the ones that are most frequently used. Now I'm going to go back into here and I will change that. This is cute for a quilter. So if I'm a piecer and a quilter, it has now come up with all the quilting stitches. They're all prefixed with Q. So you may have this inadvertently set on your machine and wondering why you're not getting the standard utility stitches. It's in your settings here. Sorry, where you have the Q set on. I like to just be on the utility ones, and then I can just select whatever I want. So reinforcement priority. I'm going to go back to the main here. Like all Brother machines, you will have one stitch with a, I'm going to call that a thick dash at the beginning, or a double dash. So this one is a lock stitch, this is a back stitch. So you can actually select how you want to start your seams. Let's go back into here. I can have it that it always does reinforcement, so that whenever I start a seam, I'm always lock stitching or I'm reverse sewing. Okay. So you can enable the endpoint setting, the temporary stop, if you want it. This option is used when we use our snowball to mark the ends of our stitching. So we want to get our top stitching or our quilting bang on, right to a certain point. Let's go to the next one. English, we can select many different languages. The light, so this is the intensity of this light. The beautiful thing about the Brother machine is that we have LED lighting in here and above it. So there's lots of light in your workspace. You can actually turn this down. As you can see, it has now gone darker. That may be what you need to do. Say if you're working on a special color fabric, I know glow-in-the-dark fabric, you probably would want your lights to be a little dimmer. The next option is the screen display. So that's this LCD screen here. The upper and bobbin thread sensor, which is wonderful. So when our bobbin is getting low, it's going to come up and tell us that our thread is getting low. And the machine speaker volume. So I can increase it, or I can turn it right off. Some people don't like all these bells and whistles we have with electronics now. So I'm just going to put it back to 3. Needle position, stitch placement. So that's going to tell me if my needle is going to be above the fabric, just touching the fabric, or below the fabric. Let's go to our next page. Initial screen. So when we went out, this is the opening screen. So let's take a look at our options for our initial screen. We can just have a standard Brother home page or the sewing embroidery screen. Let's just go ahead, select that, okay. Let's go and change it to opening screen. So when you turn off the machine and turn it back on, as it goes through its boot up cycle, this is the exact same thing as a computer. You want to let it go through its boot up cycle. There's your screen. And you would just tap on it. So let's go back in. I can change it, just say, let's go to the sewing embroidery screen. Power it off. Power it back on. That's your opening screen now. So the Luminaire, all the Brother beautiful graphics is not there. Let's go page 4, page 5. Eco mode is actually really nice. I tend to leave my sewing machine on all the time. And what eco mode does is just like a screensaver. It will power down if it's not been used within a period of time. Now, if you were embroidering on your machine and you went away to get a cup of coffee, change the laundry, this doesn't come into play because your machine is still being used. But if you go away and you don't want to turn off your machine, you want to select Eco Mode, usually about a 30-minute is nice, and then the screensaver will actually come on so you don't burn images into your screen. So shut off support mode. Do you want to go one step further and do you want it to almost auto shut off? It's not a hard shut off where you're hitting your power button, but this could be at an hour where it actually, everything powers down and you just tap the screen to wake it up. Screensaver, 5 minutes. In my world, that's far too fast. I would probably pick something like 20 minutes. And of course, you can actually select the different types of screensavers. You could customize it. There are 5 different ones. You can actually load these up and you could change it. So if you actually really wanted to put JPEGs on your machine for your screensaver, JPEGs of which are pictures of your pets, grandchildren, children, you could do that as well. Okay. Well, we have a mouse pointer. As opposed to touching the screen, you could actually have a mouse plugged into the side. We have ports in the side here. I have yet to see anybody use the mouse pointer.